Chapter 1. A hand comes down hard on a small pair of shoulders, and the sickening sound of a plastic lunchbox shattering against the cold marble floor echoes through the silent corridor. Pause. I do not hesitate. I drop my mop, the dirty water splashing across my scuffed steel-toe boots, and sprint straight toward the sound. In this underground harbor estate, you learn fast that silence usually means someone is dying, but loud violence means someone is taking their time. I round the corner of the grand executive hallway, my chest heaving beneath my heavy work shirt, and stop dead in my tracks. Vane Vance, the undisputed alpha head of the city's most ruthless crime syndicate, has his 7-year-old son, Kael, pinned flat against the gold-embossed wall. Vane's jaw is clenched tight, his dark eyes burning with an lethal, suffocating power. His alpha aura is flooding the hallway, thick and heavy like ozone before a lightning strike, designed to crush the boy's spine into submission. Kael's small hands are clawing at his father's massive leather jacket, his eyes wide with absolute terror, his tiny body trembling violently as he suffocates under the sheer weight of his father's dominant presence. Any normal Omega in this city would drop to their knees, hyperventilating and vomiting from the raw pressure of an unleashed Syndicate Alpha. Pause. I am not a normal Omega. Deep beneath my heavy uniform, stuck tight against the warm skin of my inner thigh, my industrial-grade scent suppression patch is burning hot, fighting off the chemical wave. I do not drop to my knees. I move forward. I close the distance in 3 long strides, step straight into Vane's lethal scent field, reach out, and grab the mob boss's thick wrist with a grip made of pure iron. Vane freezes. His dark head snaps toward me, his eyes wide with genuine shock. No one touches Vane Vance. No one steps into his space without permission. And certainly, no low-wage night shift cleaner steps between him and his bloodline. I tighten my grip on his leather sleeve, squeezing until my knuckles turn chalk white, forcing his heavy hand an inch away from the terrified boy's face. Hit your son one more time. I promise you will pay for it. The silence that follows is so heavy it feels physical. Kael slips down the wall, gasping for air, sliding into the shadow of my legs. Vane slowly turns his massive frame toward me, his dark eyebrows narrowing as he calculates the sheer impossibility of what is happening. A tiny, unregistered cleaner in a gray jumpsuit is standing toe-to-toe with the monster who controls the city's entire eastern docks. He lowers his arms slowly, his gaze dropping to my wrists, searching for the telltale tremble of a submission response that never comes. They call it discipline in his world, just like in yours, where people in power use force and call it guidance. They tell you that power gives them the right to break what is smaller than them. Where I come from, they use rank and physical dominance to enforce compliance. In your world, people use money, authority, and emotional guilt to force you to bow down. But the core truth remains identical. When you teach a child that love comes attached to a physical fist or a crushing force, you do not build a warrior. You just teach them how to hide where it hurts. Hi, viewers. If you were in my shoes right now, would you have risked your life to intervene or walked away to save yourself? Drop your honest answer in the comments below. I am reading every single one. Vane takes a slow step closer to me, his heavy boots making no sound against the polished floor. The air around us turns icy cold. He tilts his head, his sharp nose twitching slightly as he tries to catch a scent through my chemical barrier. He smells nothing but industrial floor wax and synthetic lavender, but his eyes tell me he knows I am lying. Slowly. You have 5 seconds to take your hands off me before I feed you to the harbor crabs, cleaner. I do not let go. In fact, I pull Kael slightly further behind my left boot, using my own body as an impenetrable shield between the boy and the predator. Kael's tiny fingers wrap tightly around the fabric of my work pants, his breathing ragged and uneven. I look straight into Vane's lethal, dark eyes without blinking. I have lost a home before. I have watched an entire pack burn to the ground because people with loud voices and heavy hands thought they owned the world. I will not watch it happen to a child in a quiet hallway while I hold a mop in my hand. Vane's eyes narrow even further. Slowly, deliberately, he reaches up with his free hand and taps 2 fingers against his suit lapel. High up in the shadow of the vaulted ceiling, red laser sights suddenly bloom across my chest. 3 perfectly steady red dots tracking over my heart. The Syndicate guards hidden in the rafters are waiting for his command to pull their triggers, whispering, "Last chance, cleaner." I hold his gaze, my pulse hammering in my throat, refusing to back down. But then, right against my ribs, My heavy suppression patch suddenly gives a sharp, burning pop. A tiny, undeniable trace of my true, unbonded Omega scent leaks into the cold air. Vane's eyes flare with absolute, terrifying realization. His hand moves, not to order his guards to shoot, but to grip my throat as the alarms across the estate begin to blare. Chapter 2. The high-voltage security alarms howl through the concrete walls, setting my teeth on edge as red emergency lights flash across the marble corridor. Vane does not pull his gun. He does not order his hidden snipers to fire. Instead, his hand snaps out, his thick fingers wrapping around the back of my neck with precise, terrifying control, pinning me against the cold stone pillar. He leans in so close I can feel the intense heat radiating from his face, his dark eyes scanning every inch of my features. "What are you hiding under that gray uniform, cleaner?" I do not answer him. I bring my elbow up fast, driving it hard into his ribs to force a separation, but he absorbs the blow like solid steel. Kael lets out a small, high-pitched cry from the floor, scrambling backward into the corner. That small sound breaks my focus for a fraction of a second. Vane notices. He uses that momentary distraction to drag me down the hallway, throwing open the heavy oak doors of his private executive office and shoving me inside before slamming the door shut against his approaching guards. The room goes dead silent, isolated by thick acoustic soundproofing. Vane moves behind his massive mahogany desk, his movements calm, fluid, and dangerously composed. He opens a dark leather folder that sits on top of his desk, flipping through high-resolution security prints of my face, my fake identification papers, and my forged work permits. For the last 2 hours, my intelligence team has been digging into your past. 0 bank accounts, 0 family ties, 0 criminal records. You do not exist on any state database, yet you handle yourself like someone who has survived a war. A man whose entire empire runs on leverage just discovered he has no lever to pull against you. He tosses the folder onto the wooden surface. It slides to a stop right in front of me. I stand near the center of the room, my boots planted wide, keeping my arms loose at my sides. I know how men like Vane think. When they cannot buy your loyalty and they cannot find a secret to hold over your head, they resort to absolute physical containment. In my world, an unbonded, packless Omega without an alpha sponsor is considered public property, a biological clean slate to be claimed, registered, or discarded by local authorities. In your world, when someone loses their status, their money, or their paper credentials, society treats them as if they are completely invisible. They strip away your dignity, lock you out of basic opportunities, and force you to live in the shadows just to secure a basic roof over your head. But dignity is not something granted by a legal document or a high rank. It is something you refuse to let them take. Vane leans forward, resting his heavy forearms on the polished wood. The red laser sights from the window outside vanish as he waves his hand, dismissing his men from the perimeter. He is no longer looking at me like an intruder. He is looking at me like an unsolved puzzle that threatens his entire structure. Slowly. Effective immediately. Your sanitation contract with the harbor firm is canceled. You are no longer cleaning floors down at the docks. I narrow my eyes, stepping forward. You cannot fire me for keeping your hands off a kid. I am not firing you. I am reassigning you. You start tomorrow morning at 6 as the personal residential caretaker at my private mountain estate. You will live in the West Wing. You will oversee Kael's daily schedule, and you will stay where I can see every breath you take. I let out a sharp, breathless laugh. You think I am going to move into your house after what I just saw you do in that hallway? You are insane. Vane stands up slowly, towering over the desk. His dark shadow stretches across the Persian rug, reaching all the way to my boots. He reaches into his jacket pocket, pulls out a small, metallic card key, and slides it across the wood. Refuse the offer, and I hand your forged identification papers directly to the Central Enforcement Bureau before sunrise. They will have you locked in an Omega processing facility by noon. Accept the offer, and you get a private room, a 6-figure salary, and total access to my son. The choice is yours, Renic. My heart stops. He spoke my real name, not the fake name printed on my blue cleaning badge, but my actual birth name, a name I have not heard spoken out loud since my home burned 8 years ago. My hands clench into tight fists at my sides as I stare at the keycard sitting on the polished mahogany. He knows I am an unregistered Omega, and he knows my true identity, yet he is offering me absolute access to his only heir. It is a trap, a gilded cage, designed to draw me out into the open, where he can study my every move until my suppression patch finally fails completely. I step up to the desk, reach out, and snatch the metallic keycard off the surface. I will take the job, but touch that boy like that again, and no amount of security guards will save you from me. Vane does not flinch. A tiny ghost of a smile touches the corner of his strict mouth before vanishing entirely. "We will see about that," he murmurs. 10 minutes later, I am walking through the quiet, snow-covered gates of the harbor estate toward my rusted pickup truck. My hands are shaking against the cold steering wheel as I turn the key in the ignition. I reach down, pulling back my jumpsuit to check the burning skin on my thigh. The suppression patch is charred black at the edges, completely ruined. I pull it off, gasping as the raw, cold air hits the irritated flesh. As I adjust my rearview mirror to pull out onto the dark coastal road, I freeze. Sitting on the passenger seat right next to me is a small, folded piece of white paper that was not there when I parked. I pick it up with trembling fingers and unfold it under the dim yellow dashboard light. Written in a messy, frantic child's handwriting are 5 simple words. "Please do not leave me." Chapter 3. The iron gates of the Sterling Mountain estate slide open without a sound, swallowing my rusted truck into a world of towering pines and blinding white snow. I park near the service entrance, my boots crunching softly against the gravel as I step out into the freezing morning air. The mansion rises up against the gray sky like a fortress of dark slate and reinforced glass. Beautiful, sterile, and utterly devoid of life. I enter through the kitchen wing at precisely 5:58. The air inside smells of ozone, cold polished granite, and expensive lemon oil. There are no family photos on the walls. There are no scattered shoes near the entryway. The entire estate is structured like a military command post disguised as a luxury home. I find Kael sitting alone at the massive marble island in the center of the kitchen. His small legs dangle inches above the floor, his eyes fixed blankly on a pristine white bowl of cold oatmeal that has been left completely untouched. When my boots click against the tile, his tiny shoulders instantly lock up. He flinches hard, pulling his head down between his shoulder blades, his whole body tensing, as if expecting a physical blow to follow the sound of footsteps. I know that flinch. I know the exact physiological math of it. It is the body's tragic way of saving energy. When a child realizes that asking for mercy does not stop the pain, the nervous system stops wasting breath on crying. It just prepares the muscles to absorb the impact. In this world, rank dynamics teach young omegas and betas to accept physical intimidation as an unalterable law of nature. In your world, children growing up in unstable, high-pressure environments learn the exact same survival code. They memorize the specific cadence of heavy footsteps on the stairs. They learn to read the exact angle of an adult's jaw before a word is even spoken. They learn to make themselves small, quiet, and invisible, just to survive until the sun comes up. I do not walk up to him quickly. I do not offer him a loud, cheerful greeting that would startle his elevated heart rate. Instead, I pull out a wooden stool 4 feet away, set my heavy tool bag down on the floor with a slow, deliberate thud, and sit down without making direct eye contact. Softly. "Cold oatmeal is absolute trash, kid." Kael slowly tilts his head, his wide brown eyes peeking at me from beneath his messy dark bangs. He does not speak. He just watches me with a cautious, hawk-like intensity. I reach into my jacket pocket, pull out a fresh apple I brought from my apartment, and pull a clean pocket knife from my belt. I begin slicing the apple into smooth, perfect wedges, placing them neatly on a paper towel between us. I slide the paper towel 2 inches closer to his side of the counter, then lean back against the wall, crossing my arms over my chest. I do not force him to take it. I give him total control over the distance. For 10 long minutes, the only sound in the grand kitchen is the quiet ticking of the wall clock. Then, slowly, painfully, Kael's small hand reaches out. He grabs a single apple slice, pulls it back to his mouth, and takes a quiet, crunching bite. His shoulders drop a fraction of an inch. Coldly, he does not eat fruit in the morning. I do not jump. Vane Vance is standing in the double archway leading to the main hall. He is dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair combed back neatly, his aura clamped down tight behind an impenetrable wall of alpha discipline. He walks into the kitchen, his heavy leather shoes striking the tile with the exact same rhythm that made Kael flinch earlier. I stay seated. He eats what nourishes him, I reply, keeping my voice flat and even. A child cannot grow on cold starch and fear. Vane stops right beside my stool. He looks down at the sliced apple, then at his son, who is frozen mid-chew, staring down at his small lap. Vane reaches into his coat, pulls out a small leather case, and sets a clear glass vial filled with a thick, amber liquid onto the counter right next to Kael's water glass. Slowly, administer this at precisely 9 o'clock. 4 drops in his water. Not 3, not 5. Exactly 4. I look at the clear glass vial. There are no pharmaceutical labels on it. There are no doctor's instructions or medical seals. It looks like an unrefined chemical compound mixed in an underground lab. What is it? I ask, my hand hovering near my pocket knife. Coldly. It is none of your concern. Follow the instructions, or you will be off this property before lunch. Vane turns on his heel and walks out of the kitchen, his heavy footfalls fading down the grand hallway toward his private study. The moment the heavy double doors close in the distance, Kael lets out a long, shuddering breath, dropping his head completely onto his arms against the cold marble counter. I lean in closer to the boy, my heart heavy with a terrible, familiar suspicion. I pick up the glass vial, holding it up to the morning sunlight streaming through the high windows. The liquid is unusually dense, swirling with faint, iridescent streaks that settle at the bottom like liquid fire. Kael looks up at me, his lower lip trembling slightly, whispering, "It burns my throat when he makes me take it," he whispers, his voice barely audible over the hum of the refrigerator. I stare at the unmarked vial, my blood running cold as the truth begins to piece itself together. This is not medicine. This is a heavy-grade synthetic stimulant designed to force a biological reaction in high-tier ranks. I slide the vial into my own pocket, replace it with a dummy glass bottle from my toolkit, and look down at the boy. "I need you to listen to me very carefully, Kael," I say, my voice steady and firm. "From this moment on, you do not swallow anything in this house unless I hand it to you myself. Do you understand me?" Kael nods slowly, his tiny fingers tightening around my work sleeve. But before I can say another word, the heavy security panel on the wall near the pantry suddenly clicks from green to flashing red. A muffled, mechanical chime echoes through the floorboards as a secondary surveillance camera in the ceiling rotates, its small blue lens locking directly onto my face. Chapter 4. The blue camera lens clicks as it zooms in, tracking my movements with cold mechanical precision. I stand up slowly, placing myself between the wall camera and Kael, shielding the boy from its field of view. The security grid in this house is not just designed to keep intruders out. It is built to keep everyone inside under constant, microscopic observation. By noon, Vane has departed the estate for an emergency meeting at the city docks, leaving me alone with Kael in the massive, quiet house. I use the time to complete my assigned duties, but my mind is racing. I walk through the grand corridors, taking mental notes of every exit, every security sensor, and every blind spot in the architectural layout. I find Kael sitting on the rug in the main library, surrounded by tall stacks of leather-bound books. He is not reading them. He is using them to build a tall, rigid wall around his small wooden chair, creating a temporary fortress to hide himself from the vast, empty room. I sit down on the floor near his structure, handing him a small wooden latch I repaired from the pantry door. He takes it quietly, turning the polished metal over in his tiny hands. Pause. "I know why your father built this place so far up in the mountains," I say softly, looking out the tall glass windows at the dense, snow-covered forest. "He thinks if he builds the walls high enough and makes the air cold enough, the world outside cannot touch what is inside." Kael looks up from the metal latch, his dark eyes wide and clear. "He lost my mother here," the boy says, his voice flat and devoid of emotion, like he is reading a line from a history book. "Before I was born, knew. A fire in the old house." My heart drops into my stomach. I look at the boy, seeing the deep, unspoken grief mirrored in his young eyes. In my world, pack tragedies leave permanent marks that no title or wealth can erase. 8 years ago, my own pack was wiped out in a single night of tactical violence, ordered by a corrupt regional lord who wanted our territory. I survived because my mother shoved me into an underground drainage pipe beneath the burning kennels, telling me to keep my mouth shut and my scent hidden until the sun came up. I spent years believing that isolation was the only true safety, that if you never let anyone close enough to know your name, no one could ever use your heart against you. In your world, people who have been deeply hurt build the exact same emotional fortresses. After a terrible betrayal, a painful divorce, or the sudden loss of someone who held your world together, you promise yourself that you will never be that vulnerable again. You build high emotional walls. You keep your conversations surface level, and you push away anyone who tries to get close. You call it self-preservation, but a fortress built entirely on fear eventually becomes a tomb. Vane built this mountain estate to hide his grief, but in doing so, he turned his son's childhood into an absolute prison. I reach out and gently lay my hand on top of the wooden wall Kael has built around his chair. Softly. Walls keep bad things out, Kael, but if you do not leave a door, you lock yourself in the dark. Kael watches me carefully. Slowly, with great care, he reaches out his small hand and pushes down a section of the book stack, creating an open gap between us. A tiny, rare smile touches his lips for a fraction of a second. Suddenly, a sharp metallic ping echoes from my pocket. It is my encrypted satellite receiver, a small device I keep hidden inside my work boot to monitor regional radio frequencies. The screen lights up with a localized frequency pulse originating from the tree line less than 300 yards from the estate's outer perimeter wall. I freeze. That is not a standard Syndicate security channel. That is a tactical directional scanner used by long-range scouting teams. Someone is sitting in the snow out in those woods, monitoring the heat signatures inside this house. I stand up quickly, grabbing Kael by the hand and pulling him away from the tall glass windows. "Come on," I say, my voice dropping to a low, authoritative whisper. We are moving to the interior hallway right now. Kael does not argue. He senses the sudden shift in my posture, his instincts razor-sharp from years of living on high alert. I lead him quickly into the windowless hallway near the central staircase, locking the heavy reinforced doors behind us. I pull my knife from my belt, my heart pounding a steady, rhythmic drum against my ribs. I stand near the frame of the heavy door, listening to the vast, quiet house. Outside, the wind howls through the pine trees, carrying the faint, distant crunch of heavy boots moving through deep snow toward the back porch. They are moving in under the cover of the afternoon snowstorm, taking advantage of Vane's absence at the docks. They think the estate is defended only by automated cameras and a single, low-wage cleaner. They do not know who is standing on the other side of this door. I glance down at Kael, who is standing quietly behind my left leg, his eyes fixed on the gleaming steel blade in my hand. He is not flinching now. He is watching me with absolute, unwavering trust. I raise my left hand, holding up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1, signaling the exact rhythm of the approaching steps outside. The heavy brass door handle on the service entrance begins to turn slowly from the outside, the lock clicking softly as a bypass key is inserted into the frame. Chapter 5. The brass door handle snaps down hard, and the heavy service door swings open into the blinding white storm. 2 men in unmarked tactical winter gear step into the mudroom, their boots dripping slush onto the clean tile. They carry suppressed submachine guns, their movements fast, synchronized, and professional. They are not random Syndicate thugs. They move with the rigid, brutal efficiency of elite pack enforcers. Before the first man can raise his weapon, I burst through the interior doorway. I do not call out. I do not give a warning. I drive my heavy work boot straight into the lead man's knee joint, feeling the bones snap under the impact. He lets out a strangled gasp, collapsing to one side, but his partner is already swinging his barrel toward my chest. I dive low, sliding across the slick tile floor, reaching up to grab the hot barrel of the weapon with my gloved hand. I twist the metal hard, forcing the muzzle toward the ceiling just as a quiet burst of suppressed fire tears through the plaster above us. I drive my elbow into the man's throat, knocking the wind from his lungs, then slam his head backward against the heavy iron doorframe until he goes completely limp. The room drops back into silence, save for the howling wind whipping through the open doorway. My chest heaves as I stand over the 2 unconscious men, my knuckles bruised and bleeding through my work gloves. I reach down, stripping the lead enforcer of his tactical radio, his sidearm, and his access cards. I check the tactical radio's display screen. A single text message is glowing in bright green LED letters across the small monitor. Secure the Enigma child. Eliminate the Alpha's cleaner. My breath hitches in my throat. They knew I was here, and more importantly, they know what Kael is. I kick the open door shut, throwing the heavy deadbolts into place, and race back into the central hallway. Kael is standing exactly where I left him, his small back pressed flat against the wall, his face pale, but his eyes totally steady. He looks down at my bloody gloves, then up at my face. "They came from the river pack, didn't they?" He asks quietly. I kneel down in front of him, setting my hands firmly on his small shoulders. "We are leaving this house right now, Kael. We are not waiting for your father to get back from the docks." I lead him quickly down the stairs to the basement medical wing. needing to secure my medicine supplies before we break for the woods. The basement is cold, lit only by blue emergency strip lights embedded in the concrete floor. I head straight for Vane's private medical vault, using the heavy steel bypass key I took from his desk yesterday to unlock the reinforced door. The heavy vault door swings open with a low pneumatic hiss. Inside, row upon row of glass vials sit secured in refrigerated storage units. But as I step closer to the main storage rack, I stop dead in my tracks. The vials are not filled with industrial suppressors or syndicate narcotics. Every single container is labeled with a handwritten medical tracking code, detailing Kael's specific biological markers. Beside the rack sits a large leather journal filled with Vane's precise, tight handwriting. I pick up the journal, my eyes scanning the pages frantically under the harsh blue light. Page after page details daily medical logs, heart rate monitoring, and precise dosage calculations spanning 7 full years. I read the entries, my mind reeling as the terrifying truth completely shatters everything I thought I knew. Vane was not abusing his son in that harbor hallway. Kael was born with a rare, fatal metabolic blood defect unique to Enigma-class offspring. His body does not naturally synthesize critical survival proteins without high adrenaline instinctual triggers. Without controlled, high-stress biological stimulation, administered at precise intervals, the boy's nervous system shuts down completely, leading to massive organ failure before his 8th birthday. Vane was not acting out of cruelty. He was forcing the boy's stress response to spike because it was the only way to keep his heart beating for another 24 hours. He has been carrying this terrible, solitary nightmare completely alone, letting the entire world believe he is a monster, letting his own son fear his touch, just to keep the child alive for one more day. In this world, society judges a leader instantly by the harshness of his actions, never asking what burden he carries behind closed doors. In your world, how many times have you looked at a distant, cold parent, a strict boss, or a sharp-tongued relative, and decided they were just heartless? How often do people endure absolute hell in total silence, taking the blame and accepting the hatred of the very people they are trying to protect, because explaining the truth would put everyone in even greater danger? I drop the journal onto the metal desk, my hands shaking uncontrollably as deep, overwhelming guilt crashes over me. I threaten to kill a man who has been breaking his own soul every single day to save his son. And, suddenly, a heavy, familiar scent floods through the ventilation grate above my head. It is dark, heavy, and burning with absolute lethal rage. I snap my head toward the basement stairs. Vane Vance is standing at the top of the landing, his black coat covered in fresh snow, his heavy handgun drawn and pointed straight at my forehead. His eyes are dead, cold, and wide with terrifying fury, as he sees me standing inside his private vault next to his son. "Step away from my son's medicine. Cleaner," Vane whispers, his voice low enough to rattle the concrete beneath my feet. "Or I put a bullet between your eyes before you can take another breath." Chapter 6. I do not lower my hands, but I do not reach for my weapon either. I take a single, slow step forward, setting my body firmly in front of the open journal, so the dim blue light falls directly across the detailed medical entries. Vane's finger tightens on the trigger, the heavy black iron barrel remaining steady as a rock, aimed squarely at the center of my skull. "I know what this liquid is," I say, keeping my tone flat and controlled despite the cold sweat dripping down my back. "I know why you pinned him against the wall at the harbor estate. You were forcing his heart rate to spike to trigger his metabolic response." Vane freezes. The terrifying, murderous glare in his dark eyes flickers for a fraction of a second, replaced by a sudden, hollow shock. He lowers the weapon 2 inches, his chest heaving under his heavy leather coat as he stares at me. "You were never trying to hurt him," I continue, taking another small step toward the bottom of the stairs. "You have been carrying this entire nightmare on your back, while the whole city calls you a monster. You let your own son fear your touch, because telling him the truth would make him feel like a broken target." Vane lets out a raspy, jagged breath, his massive shoulders slumping slightly as the terrifying alpha mask he wears every day cracks right down the middle. He steps down the concrete stairs, his boots heavy, and leans his back against the cool stone wall, as if his legs can no longer support the massive weight of his secret. "He has 3 months left if I cannot stabilize the protein synthesis," Vane whispers, his voice breaking in a way that makes my chest ache. "The rival syndicate lords know he carries Enigma blood. They do not want to heal him. They want to harvest his cellular tissue to create biological military weapons. I have to keep him terrified enough to keep his blood moving, but every time I lock him in that posture, I see my own reflection, and I despise what I have become. I move closer to him, stopping just 2 feet away. In this harsh world, society teaches leaders that vulnerability is an invitation for absolute destruction. In your world, how many people suffer in total isolation because they believe showing pain makes them weak? How many parents, providers, and protectors carry crushing financial, physical, or emotional burdens completely alone because they think asking for help means they have failed? True strength is not carrying a mountain until your bones snap. True strength is having the courage to let someone stand beside you in the dark. I reach out and place my hand directly over Vane's cold leather sleeve, right where his pulse is hammering against his wrist. He looks up at me, his dark eyes wide with an intense, raw emotion he can no longer suppress. For the first time since I stepped foot on his property, his dominant alpha aura softens, wrapping around my senses not like a suffocating cage, but like a warm, protective shield. Before either of us can say another word, the emergency lights in the basement flick 3 times and go completely pitch black. The heavy iron security doors at the top of the stairs slam shut with a deafening metallic bang, followed immediately by the sharp, mechanical click of electronic magnetic locks engaging from the outside. A cold, synthetic voice echoes through the ventilation shafts above us, cutting through the heavy darkness. "Security grid overridden," the voice announces. "Oxygen recycling disabled in lower vault sector." Vane snaps back into absolute focus, his heavy hand immediately grasping mine in the total dark. He pulls me close to his side, his thumb pressing firmly against the back of my hand. "They cut the primary power lines from the main transformer down the road," he mutters against my hair. "This was not an opportunistic raid. Someone inside my inner circle gave them our private architectural blueprints." My heart hammers in my ribs as I realize Kael is still upstairs in the central hallway, locked behind a single interior security door, while an unknown strike team descends upon the dark manor. I pull my hand from Vane's grip and reach for my heavy utility knife, feeling the cold steel handle in my palm. "We need to break through the ventilation shaft to reach the upper floor before the air in this vault runs out," I say, pointing my small tactical flashlight toward the ceiling grate. Vane nods, boosting me up onto his broad shoulders so I can reach the heavy metal screws securing the vent. I work fast, my fingers moving with frantic precision as the cold air in the room begins to thin. We scramble into the tight metal shaft just as a heavy tear gas canister drops from the ceiling vent into the vault below, filling the room with thick white poison. We crawl through the tight dark ducts, the sound of our ragged breathing echoing off the tin walls. As we reach the primary junction directly above the Grand Library, I look through the small air slits down onto the floor below. Standing in the center of the room under the beam of a tactical spotlight is a tall, scar-faced alpha wearing the golden crest of my former home pack, the very same men who burned my village to the ground 8 years ago. Beside him, tied securely to a wooden chair, is Kael. The scar-faced man pulls a heavy syringe filled with clear fluid from his jacket, holding it up to the light with a cold, sickening grin. "Call your boss on the radio," the man orders his guard. "Tell Vane Vance that if he wants his rare Enigma boy left alive, he surrenders the entire harbor estate by midnight." Chapter 7. I do not wait for Vane's signal. I drive my heavy boot straight down through the thin aluminum air grate, crashing through the drywall ceiling and landing squarely on top of the guard holding the spotlight. The heavy metal lamp shatters against the hardwood floor, plunging the library into absolute chaos and dark shadow. Before the scar-faced leader can react, Vane drops from the ceiling right behind me, his massive frame hitting the floor like a falling anvil. He moves with terrifying speed, sweeping his leg low to knock 2 approaching guards off their feet, while pulling his silenced firearm from his shoulder holster. The quiet f of his shots echoes through the dark room, dropping the enforcers before they can even raise their submachine guns. I roll across the floor, drawing my tactical knife, and slice clean through the heavy nylon ropes binding Kael's wrists to the chair. The boy does not scream. He scrambles into my arms, burying his face in my chest as I pull him beneath the thick oak study desk to shelter him from the flying glass. "Renic, look out!" Kael cries out, pointing his tiny hand toward the dark doorway. I snap my head up just as the scar-faced leader lunges out of the shadows, driving a heavy iron baton straight toward my head. I bring my forearm up to block the blow, the heavy impact dulling my arm, but the man uses his forward momentum to slam me hard against the floorboards. He presses his knee into my ribs, his face twisting into a cruel, recognizable sneer as he catches the scent leaking from my torn suppression patch. "Well, well," the scar-faced man sneers, tightening his grip on my neck. The little runaway Omega from the Ash Valley. I thought we put a bullet in your chest 8 years ago. My vision spots red as the oxygen leaves my lungs. In this world, those who hold power believe that history is written entirely by the victors, that the weak are meant to be erased and forgotten under the boots of the strong. In your world, how many times have people from your past tried to pull you back into old pain? How often do toxic people from old chapters resurface just to remind you of who you used to be before you survived? But your past does not define your future. You are not the person who got hurt. You are the survivor who learned how to fight back. I grab the leader's wrist with both hands, dig my thumb deep into his nerve center, and twist his arm backward until the joint pops out of its socket. He screams in agony, releasing his hold on my throat. I roll out from under him, drive my palm hard into his nose, and knock him flat on his back. Vane steps out of the shadows, his face covered in dark soot, his gun leveled directly at the scar-faced leader's forehead. He stands over the fallen man like an immovable wall of judgment, his alpha aura filling the room so intensely that the air itself feels hot and metallic. "Who gave you the security codes to this estate?" Vane demands, his voice cold enough to freeze blood. The scar-faced man spits blood onto the hardwood floor, letting out a wet, rattling laugh. "You think you are protecting this boy, Vance? You do not even know who he belongs to. Check the medical archives from 8 years ago. Check the biological blood registry from the Ash Valley pack." My heart stops beating. The air leaves my lungs as if I have been hit by a freight train. I slowly stand up, staring at the scar-faced man, then turning my gaze toward Kael, who is standing quietly beside the oak desk. "What are you talking about?" I whisper, my voice shaking so hard I can barely form the words. The scar-faced leader grins, his yellow teeth stained with red. "The night we burned your pack, an Omega escaped, with an unborn Enigma child in his womb. We stole the infant from the hospital nursery before the fire was even put out and sold him to the Vance Syndicate to fund our war. He is not Vane's son, Cleaner. He is yours." The room goes completely dead silent. The wind outside howls against the broken glass of the library windows, carrying fresh snow across the dark floorboards. I turn my head slowly toward Vane. The mob boss does not look away from me. He lowers his weapon half an inch, his dark eyes filled with a deep, agonizing truth that he has kept buried in the absolute dark for 7 long years. "It is true, Renic," Vane says softly, his voice trembling for the very first time. "I bought him from the black market clinic to save his life from the pack enforcers. I did not know who his true father was until you grabbed my wrist in that harbor hallway yesterday." Chapter 8. The truth hangs in the freezing air of the broken library like a sharp piece of glass. I look down at my hands, then slowly turn my gaze toward Kael. The small boy is staring at me, his wide brown eyes reflecting the dim moonlight streaming through the shattered window. Every single detail, the exact shape of his eyes, the high curve of his cheekbones, the rare biological condition that requires precise adrenaline triggers, snaps together with terrifying, perfect clarity. He is not just a child I stepped in to protect. He is my son, the baby I was told died in the hospital nursery 8 years ago, on the night my entire world burned to ashes. I drop to my knees on the cold hardwood floor, my body shaking with a wave of grief and shock, so violent it takes my breath away. Kael takes 3 small, tentative steps toward me. He does not hesitate. He reaches out his small arms and wraps them tightly around my neck, burying his small face in the crook of my shoulder. Softly. "I knew you smelled like home," the boy whispers against my skin. I wrap my arms around his small frame, pulling him close to my chest, weeping silently as 7 years of hidden pain wash out of my system. Vane stands 2 paces away, his massive shadow covering both of us, his gun still pointed at the wounded, scar-faced leader on the floor. "Why didn't you tell me the moment you realized it?" I ask Vane, my voice raspy and broken as I look up at him through my tears. Because if the Syndicate elders knew he was the surviving heir of the Ash Valley pack, they would have executed him on the spot to prevent a bloodline war. Vane answers quietly, his dark eyes filled with absolute sincerity. "I kept him hidden as my own son, because my name was the only shield strong enough to keep him breathing. In this world, truth is often buried under layers of dangerous secrets, just to keep the innocent alive. In your world, how many times have people made impossible, agonizing choices to protect the ones they love from a cruel reality? How often do we misjudge the intentions of those around us because we only see the heavy decisions they make, not the hidden wounds they are trying to heal? Protection rarely looks like a gentle hand. Sometimes, it looks like a cold wall, built by someone willing to carry the blame so you do not have to carry the danger. Suddenly, the scar-faced leader on the floor reaches into his tactical vest, pulling out a small red detonator switch. He presses the button with a wild, desperate grin. "If I cannot have the Enigma bloodline, nobody gets it," he screams. A series of low, muffled explosions detonate across the basement foundation, shaking the entire mountain manor. The heavy plaster ceiling above the library begins to crack and collapse, raining heavy wooden beams and stone blocks down upon us. Vane moves instantly. He does not try to save himself. He throws his massive body directly over Kael and me, using his own broad back as an impenetrable shield against the falling debris. A heavy wooden beam slams hard across Vane's shoulders, making him let out a sharp, agonized groan, but he does not move an inch until the dust settles. When the crashing stops, half the roof has collapsed, blocking the primary hallway exit with tons of burning timber and rubble. Thick gray smoke fills the air, making it impossible to breathe. Vane pushes the heavy beam off his back with a raspy gasp, blood trickling down the side of his temple from a sharp cut near his hairline. He looks down at me, checking every inch of Kael and me to make sure we are unhurt. "We have to move through the underground drainage tunnel beneath the cellar," Vane says, grabbing his sidearm from the floor. "The entire structure is coming down in 10 minutes. I stand up, pulling Kael securely onto my hip, my instincts as an Omega parent flaring into absolute, unstoppable drive. We run through the smoking basement corridors, navigating through the dark, narrow passages as the house groans and collapses above us. We reach the heavy iron hatch leading to the mountain drainage tunnel. Vane uses his master keycard to release the rusted seals, throwing the hatch open to reveal the cold, snow-covered forest path leading down toward the valley. He steps back, holding the heavy iron door open for Kael and me. "Go," he orders, his voice steady despite the blood dripping down his face. "Take the truck at the lower gate and drive straight to the safe house across the state line." "What about you?" I demand, gripping his leather sleeve tightly. "You are not staying in this burning tomb." Vane looks at me, his dark eyes filled with an intense, possessive warmth that cuts through the freezing air. "Someone has to hold off the secondary strike team at the front gate so you can clear the valley," he whispers. I do not let go of his arm. I pull him forward with all my strength, forcing him through the hatch into the snow beside us. We leave together, or we do not leave at all. Chapter 9. The cold night air hits our faces as we emerge from the mouth of the concrete drainage tunnel into the deep snow of the lower mountain valley. Behind us, high up on the ridge, the Sterling Manor burns brightly against the pitch-black sky, sending columns of orange fire and dark smoke drifting up into the clouds. Vane stumbles slightly in the deep snow, his heavy frame leaning against my shoulder as we move quickly through the thick pine trees toward the hidden lower garage. I keep Kael tucked securely between us, shielding him from the freezing wind with my heavy winter jacket. We reach the small, hidden wooden barn at the base of the mountain. Inside sits Vane's unmarked armored SUV, its black paint reflecting the dim light of the snowstorm. Vane collapses against the hood, his breathing heavy and shallow as he presses a gloved hand against his ribs to stem the bleeding from his wound. I set Kael safely in the back seat, wrapping him in a warm wool blanket from the trunk, then step back outside to stand in front of Vane. I open my tactical first aid kit, pull out clean gauze and antiseptic, and begin working on his injured side without saying a word. "You should have left me at the hatch," Vane murmurs softly, his dark eyes watching my face intently as I wrap the clean white bandage tightly around his waist. "You owe me nothing, Renic. I kept your son from you for 7 years." I pull the bandage tight, making him wince slightly, then look up directly into his eyes. "You saved his life when my entire pack was destroyed," I say, my voice steady and firm. "You spent 7 years breaking your own heart every single day to keep him safe from the Syndicate lords. You are not the monster this city thinks you are, Vane Vance." Vane reaches up, his large, warm hand covering mine where it rests against his chest. His heavy alpha aura wraps around me completely, no longer cold or intimidating, but filled with a deep, unbreakable devotion. In this world, rank dynamics claim that alphas command and omegas yield, forcing people into rigid, artificial roles defined by power. In your world, how many relationships break apart because people get caught up in who holds the upper hand? How often do we confuse control with commitment, forgetting that love is not about who leads or who follows, but about two people standing side by side against whatever storm comes their way? True partnership is not built on control. It is built on mutual surrender. Suddenly, 2 bright headlights sweep across the frost-covered windows of the barn. The low, rumbling hum of a heavy V8 engine echoes from the access road outside, stopping right in front of the double wooden doors. Vane immediately shifts his body, stepping in front of me and pulling his sidearm from his belt. I draw my tactical knife, standing right beside him, our shoulders touching as we face the entrance together. The barn doors swing open, revealing a single, sleek black sedan standing in the snow. A tall, elderly alpha in a sharp, tailored suit steps out of the car, holding his hands open in a non-threatening gesture as he walks into the dim light of the barn. It is Arthur, Vane's chief legal advisor and the highest-ranking elder of the Vance Syndicate Council. "I came alone, Vane," the old man says, his voice carrying a heavy, solemn tone. "The council monitored the fire at the manor. We know the river pack attempted to seize the Enigma child." Vane does not lower his weapon. "Where does the council stand, Arthur?" he asks coldly. The old man looks at Vane, then turns his gaze to me and Kael sitting in the back of the SUV. "The council has reviewed the biological logs retrieved from the central database before the server burned," Arthur answers smoothly. "The river pack acted without authorization. The Syndicate Council has officially stripped them of their territory and recognized your claim over the boy and his biological father." Arthur reaches into his coat, pulls out a thick leather binder, and sets it on the hood of the car. "These are the absolute emancipation papers for your family. The Vance Syndicate officially releases you from all operational duties. You are free to leave the city tonight with total legal immunity." Vane stares at the documents on the hood, then looks back at me. He reaches out, takes my hand in his, and squeezes it tightly. "We are done with the Syndicate," Vane says to the old counselor, his voice filled with absolute finality. "Tell the council to never look for us again." Chapter 10. 6 months later, the golden summer sun shines brightly over the calm, blue waters of a small coastal bay, hundreds of miles away from the crime-ridden streets of the eastern docks. A light, warm breeze rustles through the tall oak trees surrounding a small, wooden 2-story house sitting right near the edge of the water. I sit on the wide wooden porch, my boots resting on the porch railing as I watch Kael running along the sandy shore with a small wooden sailboat in his hands. His health has completely stabilized over the past few months. His cheeks are full of bright, healthy color, his laugh echoing across the water clear and free, completely devoid of the quiet terror that used to haunt his every movement. Vane walks out from the kitchen, wearing a simple white linen shirt and jeans, holding 2 tall glasses of cold lemonade. He sits down beside me on the porch bench, setting the glasses on the small table between us, and wraps his heavy arm around my waist, pulling me close against his side. I lean my head back against his shoulder, letting out a long, contented sigh as his warm, protective scent wraps around us like a permanent home. "He is running faster today," Vane says softly, his dark eyes filled with a quiet, gentle joy as he watches our son play by the water. "His heart rate is completely steady," I reply, resting my hand over Vane's wrist. "He does not need the synthetic stimulants anymore. He just needed to know he was safe." Vane tilts his head down, pressing a warm, lingering kiss against my forehead, his hand sliding down to clasp mine tightly. "I spent 7 years believing that safety meant building thicker walls and keeping the world at a distance," he whispers against my skin. "You showed me that the only true safety is building a home where we can love each other without fear." In this grand journey of life, we often start by believing that power, control, and absolute isolation are the only ways to shield ourselves from the painful world outside. But real protection never comes from tyranny or fear. Pain disguised as discipline or guidance only breeds resentment, locking us in dark, lonely prisons of our own making. True strength lies in allowing those you love to grow, without forcing them to break, learning to trust that love is resilient enough to heal even the deepest wounds of the past. I look out over the water as Kael turns around on the sand, waving his small hands wildly in the air, calling for us to come join him down by the shoreline. Vane stands up, holding his hand out to me with a brilliant, genuine smile that lights up his entire face. I take his hand, stepping off the porch together into the warm sunshine, our family finally complete, whole, and completely free. Thank you so much for traveling through this incredible journey of healing, strength, and true love with us today. This story reminds us that no matter how deep the shadows of our past may seem, love and courage can rebuild even the most broken lives. If this narrative touched your heart, inspired you, or gave you hope today, please hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a supporting story that inspires on this channel. What was the most powerful moment or lesson you took away from Renic and Vane's journey today? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share your story and inspire others in our amazing community.